Hello, good morning. My name is Robert Peterson, and what we're going to do is we're going to start off with we're going to talk about the martial arts. And we're going to talk about how the impact that it had, and how did it start, and where it come from. First, I'm going to give you some background information of who I am. I started my journey with the martial arts in 1984. I was about 10 years old. The reason for my journey with the martial arts, I was a victim of being kidnapped here in the Tampa Bay area. So I was kidnapped and I was held for about 2 weeks. And then when I was free and my parents put me into the martial arts. There was a gentleman from our church, Mark Penner, and he is today he's the chairman for AAU in the state of Florida. But he was a member of our church, Tampa Bay Community Church, back in the early 80s. And then so he made it possible for me to train in the martial arts. And me and my two brothers, we got into the martial arts and we were training, and he did it, he mixed and he just called it karate, but the forms that we learned were actually the ITF style of Taekwondo. And then he influenced judo with it, with a little bit of Shotokan. He had put some Shotokan forms in there. And he had some Filipino art was mixed into it, was kendo, with some sword play when you got into the higher ranks. I got all the way up to my green belt with him. It took 2 years to get a green belt under Mark Penner. He was a good foundation for me, because I went to other schools that wasn't so strict and rigid when they teach. When you teach a student, you have to have some type of ethics and morals and something that you stand by, some purpose. If you don't, what are you doing? What are you really doing with the martial arts? And Mark Penner, we call him Mr. Penner, he had these qualities at only 25 years old. He had these, and he still has them today. He still teaches today in the 2000s how he taught in the early 80s. He didn't change one bit. I go visit his school from time to time and just to talk with them. And he doesn't change. He didn't change. So when instructors, they tell you, we have to change with the time. Nobody wants to train like they trained back in the day. What they mean by that is a lazy student does not want to train like a diligent student, like a student that really wants to train. So you have to, it's kind of like a parents when they're raising their children. You have to instill that within them. You have to tell them, this is what martial arts is. This is how we train. This is the only way to train your physical is with physical. You can't get emotion out of physical. You can't get physical out of emotion. If you're working on emotion, train emotion. Get emotional. We see that a lot today. So what happens is they try to take the emotions and give it a name, a physical name. But you can't do that. So there's three things that makes a martial artist today, a warrior in the martial arts. That is blood, sweat, and tears. And that's what's going to make the warrior. Now, not everybody's cut out for that. So there's also there's like what I call scholars in the martial arts. We need those. Those people are going to do the research. They're going to help us with all these little truth points, where it came from, lineage, legacy. They're going to help us with all that information. They're going to help us with the philosophy. They're going to help us with all of that. They're going to be great at that. That's their calling within the martial arts. And then there's a warrior. Sometimes a warrior is split in different categories. It might be sparring. It might be an excellent spar. They have really good fighting skills. And then that gets split into categories. Traditional, sport, reality, full contact. And then sport gets split in categories. Point, full contact. So everything splits. Everything can get split into a different category. And what I do is I just keep it simple. When you spar, it's contact sport, you're going to get hit. So if you're doing point sparring, well, in the tournament you can point spar, but when I teach it in my dojo, you're going to get hit. That way, when you do get hit, you know what it feels like. You understand what it feels like. Because in a real street situation, somebody's going to really hit you. You're going to get hit. And if you don't understand what a hit feels like, it's going to damage you. It's going to stop you in your tracks. Your self-esteem and your self-confidence is not going to help you, because that's emotional. That is not physical. So understand the difference from emotional and physical. So moving on, after Mark Penner, I learned all that stuff from Mark Penner, and he embraced that into me at a young age. And I was able to hold that together and keep that rooted into me and take it further into my martial life. So what happened was we moved from Tampa to Columbus, Ohio. And when we got to Columbus, I was searching for Mark Penner. Couldn't. Them schools were so different. They were like point tournaments, but they was watered down point tournaments. There was no, I was searching. So my first school that I found was at a recreation center where this person, what was his name? I forgot his name. But anyways, he was teaching, Daryl Green. His name was Daryl Green. And Daryl Green was teaching Korean Kung Fu, Korean Karate, and Taekwondo. So, I never really found a link from what he was teaching to an authentic martial art. Today, I view those as his personal martial art systems, which there ain't nothing wrong with that. But you do have to know when you're training under somebody, is this something that they invented? Is this something that they founded? Is this their martial art that they founded? That way, you as a student know how to research it. You know how to look it up. You know how to find reference books on it. You know how to do things on it. That's important as a martial artist. You have to know certain things. going into a martial arts school. And this school was held at a recreation center, so it was kind of not like a storefront school, or not like sometimes you have in traditional dojos that look real authentic. And it wasn't like one of those. But it was more just a place to work out at. It was free. I was a teenager. I went there and I trained. I had fun. But it wasn't fulfilling. It didn't fulfill me. From there, I went to Great Fears, an Olympic champion, very good martial artist. He was, he had one of the Ernie Ray schools in Columbus, Ohio. And he was very well-rounded. He was a really good martial artist. He was great. He was a Columbus police officer. And from instructors that I had and other martial artists that I met in Columbus that were also Columbus police officers, Great Fears had more of a moral and ethical codes than they did. So I respect Great Fears to this day for not just being a good martial art teacher, but being a good police officer. Keeping your morals and keeping everything when you go serve the public and when you are encountering different people out on the streets and they respect you as a police officer, which wasn't common back then. It's not common today. That is a hard job to get your respect. But he got it because he respected them. You give it, you get it. That's how it works. And so what happened there was, that's when I went to my first tournament in Columbus. And I went to a tournament, and because of my Mark Penner, rigid, hard trainer in Florida, I was only an intermediate. They would accuse me of being a black belt. And so I got out of the tournament. I didn't go to his tournaments. I got accused of being a black belt because of how I trained, how I presented myself, how my discipline, how everything was. It was on what they viewed a black belt was. And that's some things that maybe other practitioners encounter from time to time. It's just a hard thing. And so what happened was I just later on my family moved. We moved to a different part of Columbus, and our next door neighbor was she was friends with somebody named Rick Moore. So she gave me his number. So I called him. So I called Rick Moore. And I go to his school. And he's very welcoming. And me and my high school friend, Philip Young, he was half Korean and half Vietnamese. Good kid. So he was good. He was a good kid at that point. Later on, he got into guns and gangs, which wasn't good, and his life changed. But at that point in time, Philip and I, what we did is we had a club inside high school, and we taught kids that were getting bullied the martial arts. We went to an abandoned warehouse, and we taught them the martial arts. And they was able to fight off bullies. And that was a big thing that I did as a teenager. I was able to give people some knowledge, help them. I was always striving to be a teacher of the martial arts. And well, moving over to Rick Moore. Rick Moore was he was a warrior. I ain't gonna lie, he's a warrior. He went to tournaments and he would tell people what foot he was going to kick them with on what side of the face, like Billy Jack. I mean, he was just that good. He was telling people how he was going to attack them and told them there ain't nothing he could do about it. He had an ego issue. He had a real bad, that was his downfall. He would have been perfect if he didn't have that ego. That ego, that stopped a lot of what he could have done within the martial arts. And for a period of time, that ego passed over to me. I had to get rid of it. And even today, sometimes I have to check myself because sometimes the ego flips through there. But it's hard when you got an ego to do anything in life, no matter what you're doing. So what happened is when I was training with Rick Moore, and inside this school, we didn't use sparring gear. We only used sparring gear for tournaments. That was new to me. We always used sparring gear. And the mat, there wasn't no mat. It was like concrete and a thin piece of carpet. And we had center block walls with a mako word against the walls, all the way down the walls. So there was mako warriors. We had heavy bags. And when we sparred, it wasn't about ring size. It was everybody lined up, and then you stood in front of somebody, whoever they was, no matter what rank they was, and you sparred them. And they hit you, and it hurt sometimes. And what happened was, when you said stop, we moved down one space, and everybody rotates. Everybody rotates around one space. And then they spar a new person, then a new person, then a new person. And that's how we sparred. No gear. I was a yellow belt crawling between black belt's legs. It was tough. That was a tough thing. And then, when I realized that that the school was going downhill, it was getting more into money. He joined something called the Educational Funding Company. When he joined the Educational Funding Company, it went downhill. And it was, it was about the money. About the money, and there was people just buying their black belts. It just was horrible. And now I remember there was a guy here training with us all the time on certain days. Mike Wilson. And I knew he was good. And I worried when I went up against him. It was like he was good. Mike Wilson he was the man. He was a senior student of Rick Moore. And so I found out where his school was. I went to his school. started training under Mike Wilson. And it was a whole different ballgame. He was telling me how, no, you got to do this, no, you're doing that wrong, this, and he corrected every little thing. And then I started getting better, getting better each time. And he began to teach me other styles, stuff from Shotokan and other things. And at this point, when I was training under Mike Wilson, my seizures were getting a little bad. And the school didn't want to have me there. It was a risk. They didn't want me at school. They wanted to have a teacher come to my house to teach me. So it would open another door for me. So from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, the Larkins Hall was open, and it had free martial arts. Didn't cost me nothing. I trained under some top people. I trained under Dr. Fred Wu, who was a student. He learned Wing Chun from Yip Man. And I trained in Jeet Kune Do. I trained in Aikido. I trained in Kendo there. I trained in Kung Fu there, another style of Kung Fu. I did some Shotokan there. I trained in Isshinryu there. There's many different styles that I trained in. I trained in Jiu-Jitsu there. And it opened that door for me. And then when I go back to train at my primary instructor, Mike Wilson, he will critique all that. Everything I learned, I talk to him about it. And he will critique it. So it all fits into one curriculum. He explained to me how important it is for whatever styles you learn, you have to have everything flow into one accord. If you don't, it's chaotic. So even though you train in many different styles, you have to have it flowing in one accord. So everything flows together. So it works in unison with what you need it to work with. And about a year later, I became Mike Wilson's senior student. So Mike Wilson was more senior student, and I was Mike Wilson's senior student. And then what happened was I went and opened up my dojo. I opened up a school in West Virginia. And when I did that, it was I've had it with AAU. I wanted to follow my first instructor, Mark Penner, with AAU because they have a lot of benefits. So I want to give my students the most benefits I can give them with the best league. And at that time, it was AAU. They helped with a lot of different things. And this part of West Virginia that I lived at was a little town, one street light. It was, so in a country part of the town, there were some students that wanted to, so the whole county, and so there was, I've noticed some kids, they were taking these calves, and they had to go get them. So they had to tie them up, and they had to grab them, throw them, tie them up, pin them down, do all this other stuff. And I looked at that, and immediately what came to my mind was AAU judo. So as a business owner, I knew, I thought, okay, so how can I profit off of this? How can I help me and them at the same time? I thought about AAU judo. Okay, I'm going to put them in AAU judo. So I went and I talked to the farmer and the different farmers around, and so we agreed that we'd wait until harvest time was over, so that way they wouldn't be out there and doing a lot of stuff in the field. So once harvest time was over, we trained, and that lined up with a lot of the AAU tournaments. So we train. I'll teach them some basic throws, some hip throws, shoulder throws, some pins, how to pin somebody, just some basic stuff. They already knew how to do leverage, how to do all that, because they was throwing calves around. And when I put them in those tournaments, and they went there and they threw them other kids, the kids went up in the air, and they was able to win. My school came back as the champions, and I'm not even a black belt at judo, but I saw something and I went after it, and I was able to teach my students. This is how you do this effectively. This is how you throw effectively. You already have the strength and the know-how. Now let's learn the techniques. And that's what we did. We went after it, and we won. And then we also won in karate. In the region that I was at, my school was the top school. We did numerous things. And then the worst moment of my life hit. I was diagnosed with cancer. I had mouth cancer and bladder cancer. And then, like 2 weeks before that happened, these people came to my door knocking, trying to sell me this product, tell me that it cures cancer. And I was skeptical. I was like, okay, whatever. I'll take the information and I'll listen to you for a minute. Okay. And I just put it on my table, didn't even mess with it. Didn't even look at it. Didn't even give it a second look. But when the doctor said I had cancer, that was a big deal to me, so I went and I looked at that, read that paper. I ordered 3 cases of that stuff. And when I ordered that stuff, I ordered that. It was a tea, and I drunk a big glass every hour. I ain't lying. And the next time I went to the doctor, I didn't have no cancer. And then that's when I started getting into herbal medicines. I started educating myself. It took me 2 years to get to a point where I actually knew something. And then today, I have something called Zarel seasonings. Basically what you can do is you can use this seasoning and you can put it on your food, any food. And it doesn't matter if that food causes high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, whatever that food might cause. That seasoning will counter it because it's medicine. That seasoning isn't just herbals. I mix it with some of the best tasting some of the best tasting seasonings out on the market. So I mix it with other seasonings that's tastes good, really good seasonings. So I mix herbal medicine with good tasting seasoning, my favorite seasonings, and together they taste good and they heal you. So, so therefore we keep everything in a healthy way. You cure your body with each bite, each taste. So whatever the food is, it might cause the illness, but then you're counterbalancing it with that seasoning, and it keeps you healthy. Today, it don't matter whenever I go to the doctor. I go to the doctor, I get all my organs looked at. I get them all checked out. There's never anything wrong with me. I never get sick. I never get a cold. I don't have these issues. I keep myself healthy. These seasons, they even helped me when COVID-19, when that was around real big and bad. I doubled and tripled up on that during that time. And I had to ride the bus to and from work during that time period. And I know on the bus, some people had to have the COVID. They had to have some type of issues. But I've never got sick. I've never had an issue because of the seasons. You keep your immune system strong, you'll be okay. And one big thing to understand is that these seasons are all natural. They are all natural. There's no chemicals in them. There's nothing in them that's bad. So they're going to work well with your body because it's natural. And whenever you read something as to do with a herbal medicine, and it says to check with your health care provider before taking this, don't check with your physician. They don't know nothing about it. Find you a nutritionist. A nutritionist would know more about that herbal medicine than your healthcare provider. Your healthcare provider don't even know anything about supplements. That's a nutritionist. Know the difference. Your healthcare provider, your doctor, your physician, knows about pharmaceutical medications. And that's about it when it comes to medicines. And they know more about pharmaceutical medications than they do biology, which is sad. Because the way I figure that is they're going to tell you more about how to fix something with a medication than with fixing it through biology. For an example, to understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about biology, there's this guy I listen to on social media. His name is Gary Bricker. Let me give you a background of Gary Bricker so you understand his credentials. This guy spent 20 years as just an agent for insurance companies. He can go to somebody and he can tell the exact day they're going to die. Just by a simple blood test. Just by understanding how how do they breathe? How well are they breathing? How well is their oxygen intake inside their body? How well are certain functions inside their body? So he can tell when they're going to die. When's the last breath they're going to take? By how their body is functioning. Okay, so let's go over that real fast. All right. A doctor would tell you that you might have inherited this health disorder from a family member, either your father's side or your mother's side, which is incorrect. It's false information. It's misinformation. Because simple way to find that out is say, okay, if I inherited this from my parent, then what is the name of this gene? What's the name of the gene for high blood pressure? What's the name of the gene for heart disorders? What is the name of the gene for cancer? Okay? So what they're going to tell you is that they're not going to have a name because there is no name, because that's a false claim. What happens, what you inherit is not a disorder, but a lack of a raw mineral. Okay? And that's when we get to biology. That's why I'm telling you that doctors know more about pharmaceutical medications and less about biology. Because if they know more about biology, then they would be telling you about the raw minerals that's inside your body and how your cells reproduce daily by the millions. We got less than 10 cancer cells in our body and millions of the other cells. So if they know more about biology, they would simply get rid of cancer, get rid of heart disease, get rid of all those other disorders by simply making us healthier through our biotherapy. Okay? So we can eat certain foods, we can put certain supplements into our body, and it will help us. Okay? The most important nutrient for the human body is vitamin D3. And that is the only nutrient that the body makes naturally. Vitamin D3. So vitamin D3 is let's put to example this way. So we got vitamin D3, and it's when we have, sometimes I hear in social media where it says people of color, African Americans, get sick more than another race. Well, the reason is for that is that they have a weak vitamin 3, or the vitamin 3 is having trouble. It's lacking something. Something's lacking with their vitamin D3. So they need to take a supplement of vitamin D3. They need to put vitamin D3 into their body. And then that's going to make them healthier. And if you have depression, anxiety, most health disorders, vitamin D3, that's what's going to help you. So this is how I came back with the martial arts and got cured, is because of I learned about how to treat my body, how to stay healthy. So today I teach the martial arts, medicinal arts, and philosophical arts all as one unit, because they are one unit. That's why we just talked about all that medicine and understanding it. It's important that you understand what happens when you confront, when you come to you go to your doctor and you're looking for that doctor to help you. You trust in that doctor. That doctor went to school many years. And in the beginning, that doctor became a doctor to help people. They wanted to help cure people, help save lives. That's why they went to medical school. And then somewhere along the way, things happen. And then what happens is the American Medical Association it restricts what they can do. So on another token, getting a second opinion is just one of the most ironic things that I hear after learning that doctors really cannot have their own opinion. They have to go for what the American Medical Association tells them to do. They have to strictly go by what either that hospital, that medical group that they're with, or whatever tells them that they have to do. They cannot have their own opinion on something. And that's where that term, your second opinion, isn't, because you don't even have a first opinion, so how do you get a second opinion? That just don't make sense to me. So what I do is I go to the doctor, I get the test, I find out what's going on, and then I go to herbal medicines. I was lucky to I studied 25 years of Chinese medicine from Dr. Fred Wu from the Ohio State University. So when I studied traditional Chinese medicine from the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. And then I learned a traditional Greek medicine online. So studying the traditional Chinese medicine and understanding how all that worked, and then new basic Western medicine helped me to understand how to study traditional Greek medicine online, because it pulled it together. And then what happened is I unified both of those. Eastern medicine with Western medicine. Traditional Eastern medicine with traditional Western medicine. And then combining that with modern medicine. Combining everything together. And so, we hear these terms, qi, or maybe qi. In Chinese, it's called qi. In Korean and Japanese, it's called qi. Sometimes they refer to it as life force or internal energy. I got a better term for it. Bioelectricity. So it's biology. It's your bio. It's inside your body. It runs through your nervous system and your arteries and your veins, your blood vessels. So it runs through and that's what those meet. Your nerves and your blood vessels that cross. So it runs through all those areas. And once you understand how all that works, then you start understanding how the active points work. And then what happens is you know how to heal yourself, and then you know how to use it in a self-defense situation. So it's understanding the arts and understanding the martial arts in detail in that format. Understanding how they really work is it's an obligation to study. That's why it's called studying, training. all the founding fathers of the martial arts. They all did Chinese classics. They did special studies, Japanese classics. They studied philosophy deeply and heavily. And that's what made them into what they are and into what they was. And at the same time, that's what we need to do. We need to bring that back into the martial arts. Philosophy is what makes us, our behavior, our code of conduct, our discipline come alive, our self-control come alive. Okay, we need to bring that back to the table. It brings the ethics there. It brings the morals there. And without those, we're just kicking and punching. We're just fighting. So we need to have some type of understanding and bring all that back to the table. Like always, I enjoy talking with you. And I really appreciate you viewing this video. And stay tuned for more to come. Thank you.